Hello and welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm your host, Morgan. Now, climate change is a global problem, and that's why in December of 2015, the Paris Agreement was concocted and signed by nearly every nation in an effort to commit to tackling this problem together. The United States was, of course, one of the nations that originally signed this agreement. And of course, this was seen as controversial by some Americans. Since the Paris Agreement was signed, Trump removed the U.S. from the agreement, and now Biden has had the U.S. rejoin this agreement. So we need to talk about this. So go ahead, get your snowflake drink of choice ready, and let's discuss what happened and what we need to be expecting in regard to the future of the US and the Paris Agreement going forward. So what exactly is the Paris Agreement anyway? I know that on social media, especially if you are in the United States, you see a bunch of confusing things thrown around. And one of my favorite things is we don't need to be in this agreement because it only has to do with the people of Paris. And get that thought out of your head, because it's only called the Paris Agreement because it was signed in Paris, much like the Geneva Convention is called the Geneva Convention because that's the city it was in. So Paris Agreement, Paris is only there because Paris was the city in which it happened. Now that that's out of the way, the Paris Agreement is basically an international accord that was signed in Paris on December 15th, 2015 during the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, at that 21st Convention of Parties, and that is a mouthful and I don't intend to say it again in this video. And the goal of this accord is to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions and keep global warming below a net of 2 degrees Celsius, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you actually get into the science and what 2 degrees Celsius as a global shift in climate will do, it's a big deal because it's a net shift, which means at the local levels, it's going to be much more of a big deal. But I digress. That's a topic for another day. And so basically, after signing this agreement, each nation would have to come up with its own strategy to help meet those goals. And the United States was committed to the agreement by President Obama. Now, there's a lot more that we could get into the nitty-gritty of what the agreement says, but that is not what this video is focusing on, and I have linked some resources down below that does outline that. If anyone would like a video on that, I can do it, but this is not that video. So what exactly did Trump do? Well, when he was originally running for president, Trump made a campaign promise to remove the United States from the Paris Agreement on the grounds that it puts America last, and he's a known climate change denier anyway that claims this whole climate change thing is a hoax. We all know hoax is one of his favorite words because it's a $2 word, and I'm pretty sure it's one of the only $2 words he knows. So in June 2017, Trump made good on that campaign promise and announced the formal intent to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement. Now, that withdrawal didn't take place immediately. It only actually went into effect on November 4th, 2020, which seems so long ago now, but it's really not that long ago. And on November 4th, the United States was officially pulled out of the agreement, and the reason it took so long was because in the agreement itself, that was the earliest possible date that any nation could pull out. And so that made the United States the only nation to have withdrawn from the agreement, and we are still the only nation to have withdrawn from the agreement. Now that brings us to what has happened in January, right after President Biden took office. So it was his first day of office, January 20th, 2021. That's the day he was inaugurated. It wasn't even his full day in office. He signed an executive order to have the United States rejoin the Paris Agreement. And now those of us who care about the environment are thrilled by that. And the people who still think climate change is a hoax are pissed off because it puts America last, which, no, it doesn't. It's just us acknowledging climate change is a global problem that affects everyone, and just because it affects everyone doesn't mean it puts America last. It just means that we're being a freaking responsible member of the global community. But the point here is that Biden signed an executive order to have the nation rejoin the Paris Agreement. So now what? Are we back in? Not quite, but almost. Just signing the executive order and publicly announcing intent to rejoin the agreement doesn't automatically make the United States rejoin. There are also a couple of other steps that need to be taken. The administration has to actually send a letter formally announcing the intent to rejoin so that we can be officially added back to the agreement. And that takes about 30 days for all of that to happen. So about 30 days from the date of that letter being sent, the United States can officially rejoin the agreement. And I have not found any actual information on if that letter or when it was sent, but I'm assuming, and that might be a little bit asinine on my part, that it probably happened when the executive order was signed, because joining agreements like this doesn't need the approval of Congress. It just needs the executive action. And in the resources I have linked down below, they do talk about that a little more in depth. So what we can do in the meantime, even though we're not officially part of the agreement yet, at least as of the day I'm filming, which is February 8th, we can actually begin working on our strategy to meet those commitments for the Paris Agreement. So again, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and reducing global warming and keeping it below that specific point. And despite the fact that Trump did have the United States removed from the agreement, there were actually still states that remained committed to the agreement. I know California was one of them, and we all know how Trump hates California, and that was the thing that made him very mad. But there's still a lot that's going to need to be done, despite the fact that we have some states, some smaller portions of states. So at the county and district levels, there have been little pockets of communities that have remained committed to this agreement, despite what Trump did. The big thing that changes is now we can restart working on the commitment to the goals of the Paris Agreement at the federal level, as opposed to the smaller local and state level. So things like the Green New Deal and legislation similar to that will actually help us meet those goals and help lay the groundwork that will make us a more environmentally conscious nation in the future. So to kind of wrap things up here, despite what Trump did, despite his best efforts to have the United States removed from the Paris Agreement, we're almost back in thanks to President Biden, and it's not even a full month in office yet at the time this is filmed and at the time this video is released. And while we have not necessarily been addressing climate change at the federal level under the last administration, there are states and districts and localities that have remained committed to those goals outlined in the Paris Agreement. And again, addressing climate change is not putting America last. It's just making us a responsible part of the global community, because climate change affects everyone, not just third world countries. If we can think back to a couple weeks ago when I released the video talking about Baltimore suing the fossil fuel companies, we see that American cities and states and communities are also affected by climate change in very real, very demonstrable ways. And as climate change is allowed to kind of go unchecked, we're going to see that escalating, and it's going to pop up in even more ways, like affecting human health. But I digress. That's what we kind of have going forward here, is we're rejoining the Paris Agreement, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and what we can expect in the future is to see hopefully legislation pushed through that helps keep us committed to those goals. So I hope you have a lovely, wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, evening, what have you, and I will see you all in the next one.
Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane B. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.